Hello and welcome to Politics Today. I'm Farrukh Pitafi. Today, viewers, we are going to host this special program focusing on Kashmir Black Day. The day is important because it marks the tragic decision of Indian Army being deployed in Kashmir for the first time. We are going to talk about that, but let me remind you also that because Narendra Modi is in government in India, and because Hindutva politics has taken a very unique nature, there is now no dearth of black days. If you remember, when the Indian government recolonized Kashmir by annulling the Article 370, at that time also one considered it also a black day, and it has been 814 days since that has been going on. And at that time, it was thought that the world community is going to come to the rescue of Kashmiris. I'm sure that fairy tale someday will materialize. But so far, it seems that the conscience of the world is less important than the clinking of money. We are going to talk about Kashmir today. We are going to talk about the importance of today's day. We are going to talk about the way forward and how to ensure that the kind of gruesome pictures that you are seeing at this moment on your screen can be stopped. That all this torture, all this tragedy can be stopped, and how anybody in this country or all over the world, even if their governments cannot help them, help the Kashmiris, how anybody can help Kashmiris individually. In order to help us understand these issues, we are joined by Ali Raza Syed, who is Chairman, Kashmir Council, European Union, particularly focused on human rights. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Dr. Waqas Ali Kausar joins us. He is a foreign affairs expert, very articulate and very regular guest here as well. But not only that, he hails from Kashmir. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Councillor Mubashir Chaudhry Sahab joins us from UK. He is human rights activist. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Let me start with Ali Raza Syed Sahab. What can you tell us about the efficacy of today's day?
I think the 27th of October is a very important day in Kashmir's history, because that was the day when the Indian security forces, they landed in Srinagar. And the day when the occupation started, which is continued for last 75 years, 74 years. I think we have to focus on the human tragedy from 1947 to up to now, and how we handled this, and our strategy, which in my opinion, it was it's time to change the strategy. The goal is the same, but the strategy we have to change, because the continued changing of the world and alliances are changing, the geopolitical situation is changing,
and dynamics are
changing.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
after 9/11 also, we have to think about the Indian, they successfully portrayed the Kashmiri movement as a terrorist movement. But it is up to Kashmiris and the Pakistani Foreign Office especially, that how we have to convince the international community that it is not a terrorist movement or terrorist.
Absolutely.
It is a freedom fight for their basic right, which is recognized by the United Nations.
Right.
There are resolutions for that. So the occupation, against the occupation forces, normally the occupied people, they have all rights, all means available they have to use.
And as we move forward, Shahji, we are going to talk about the kinetic aspect as well. But right now, let us first address the political angle, because the UN actually promised that it is going to offer Kashmiris a plebiscite, and they haven't actually delivered on that. Allow me to actually go to Dr. Waqas Ali Kausar. Your takes, please highlight how important this day is and What can you tell us?
Thank you. Thank you very much, first of all, for having me in your program. I mean, firstly, we need to deconstruct the narrative that India particularly built vis-a-vis Kashmir when it comes to 27th of October. We need to understand that if you say 1947 on the same day, I mean, the instrument accession, which is very much controversial, I must say it's fraudulent as well. The way they're claiming that the Indian forces landed in Kashmir after getting that signature, it's not there. So India landed in Kashmir particularly, and then the Maharaja was forced to do that in particularly one. Second, their narrative is about Kashmir is that somebody external forces are invaded, try to invade the part of AJK and other, and they reach to the Baramulla and all that. The first question is, I mean, it's a historically documented, factual thing that the rebellion against the Maharaja forces came from very local people. Let's suppose if you talk about Poonch division, if you talk about Mirpur division, you will see that the local people are literally fought against the Maharaja's oppression. They literally fought the war of liberation against those occupational forces and drove them out. So it was very much public-centric, local, indigenous movement at that time that we need to understand. Third is, I mean, the history shows, and there is a documented history. I mean, there are people around 0.5 million who were killed in Jammu in 47 and onward when there was a mass exodus. They were told that you need to go there, and then it was from a Muslim majority converted into a Muslim minority over there. And last point, I must say that there are books, there are articles, and written by the people from India as well, that there have been a lot of infrastructure built by India pre-27th of October, after, I mean, during that partition time, with an intention that India will capture that. They were no longer waiting for Maharaja's accession or anything. No, the plans were there. So it was historically we need to understand that it was very much localized public movement, one. And second, India's intention to Kashmir. India knew that it's a Muslim majority state and it will never go to that part. So that's the historical context to it. So for us, it is very much important that we got the liberated territory during that time. But today it's a black day in a history that it continued and became the world's longest protracted conflict.
It has. And while you were talking about foreign forces actually not supporting or invading, it was actually for Indian forces are practically the foreign forces which invaded, right?
Yes.
So the Indians might be right in the bit about invasion, but they are wrong about who actually invaded. Allow me to go to Councillor Mubashir Chaudhry Sahab. Sir, your take on today's importance and how we can highlight it.
Thank you very much, first of all, having me. So basically, if you see, Shah Sahab has explained we need to change our strategy, and Dr. Wakas actually explained what is the history. We all know the history now. The important is the time has gone past, and you know we are doing something, but it's probably is not enough, and the world is not listening. The strategy change is very important. So these, if you see like the Kashmiris living in Indian occupied Kashmir, every day is a black day for them, to be honest. Now even when the Narendra Modi's government come, every Muslim, every minority is living in India has a black day. Every day is a black day for them. I would say this is so important. We need to look for how we move forward, how we need to address internationally this issue. So because when it comes to India, they say this is a bilateral issue, this is an issue of territory. We need to explain this is not the issue of the territory, it is the issue of humanity. The human rights violation are going there every passing day. So once we explain that in that scenario, the world will listen. I know when it comes to the government and when it comes to the establishment, they have their Western interests. So obviously they do talk what they want to talk. But when it comes to the public, it is important we need to address it. And when that public actually vote their representatives and obviously speak to their representatives and human rights activists and the organization working in the United Nations, these are the key players actually to make a big difference. And I believe obviously the government is playing its part, but more important is all of our organizations need to come together to work on one cause.
Councillor Chaudhry, since you are sitting there, and this argument, because it has been going on, Even before August 5th decision, Indian decision, we saw that they were using pellet guns to blind children, blind protesters, and that went on for quite some time as well. Since then, we have been arguing, and this is one argument that we have been hearing, that we can sway democracies by sending the sights and sounds of victims that are Kashmiris. Unfortunately, we have seen so many pictures. A 6-year-old, a 12-year-old blinded totally and her face totally deformed. A little toddler sitting at the dead body of his own grandfather, and umpteen other such pictures and sounds. People know what India is doing in Kashmir. Why is it that that sway hasn't come, that we haven't been able to affect democracies the way it was supposed to be?
I think more important is like, yes, this is happening and this is what we are seeing. But media plays a bigger part, to be honest. Like a common person, when they see the BBC stories, CNN stories, and stories of the mainstream media, they always play a balanced role. They do not explain the way the situation is on the ground. And when Pakistan talks about, so they've been told, oh, because it's a party, that's why they are saying it. So that is one key reason, I believe. Praise to PTV World. Obviously, we have one English channel, and I think these type of channels does make a big difference. When we talk about those issues in our local language channels, nobody listens, nobody understands it, because we know this is an issue. We understand, there is human right violation and all that. But international world, we need to tell them, and we need to tell them in their language. We need to tell them the way they want to listen, which is human right issue. It's not the bilateral issue, it's a human right issue.
And that is a very important thing, sir. Allow me to come back to Shaji, Ali Raza Syed sir. Sir, one aspect is we can work to raise awareness about Kashmir issue, but that is something that has been going on for quite some time. The other aspect is kinetic operations, right, by Kashmiris or by at least morally supported by other countries as well. The third thing is, of course, when you were talking about realpolitik, there too, it seems that thanks to India's mindless policies, a third actor has actually entered into the fray, and that is China, right? Which element is more important to actually work on? Because it seems that if it is only about realpolitik, then democratic principles are usually left behind. India is going to be our ally, so we are not going to listen to anybody who complains about what India is doing. How do you actually fight all these things? Which element is important?
In my opinion, the Western democracies, especially the people, the countries which have a role to play in major issues like Sudan and like Kosovo, East Timor, and so. China is supporting the Pakistani stance. They are supporting all the way from the beginning. Yeah. But we could not convince, or we could not convey our message as we should with to Western powers.
Okay.
Western powers, they can play an important role in that, because they have very good relation with India. They have relation with Pakistan, and they are in UN Security Council also, and they have economic powers like Japan, European Union, and so on. But despite there is a trade interest between India and European Union or with Western countries, but there are people and there are institutions in these countries which are following the human rights violation, and they always champion themselves that we are the champion of human rights.
Absolutely.
So that is the point where we have to, what we are trying to do in Europe.
That is impressive. Amnesty International took a stand in India. Indian government expelled amnesty, right? In the US, after August 5th decision, when Indian government actually moved in, at that time there were hearings in Washington DC as well, at the Capitol. And there, amazingly, while the Democratic side was convinced that they are going to listen to it, the Republicans walked out. So how do you actually take care of that kind of a problem? There's too much craziness and partisanship at this moment in democracies that you cannot, you don't seem to actually, one cannot actually influence them that way.
You know, we have the example of Vietnam War. Vietnam War was not, it was the will of the people of Vietnam, first of all, and then the second was the people of United States of America. They came out in millions to protest against these violations. So it put the pressure on the government. And I think if we can convince and we can convey the message to the public in Western world, the public can put the pressure on their governments. And that is the way that we can get the support from the governments.
Right, and that is a very, very intriguing point. Dr. Waqas Salikauser, we talk about how important this is and how this has to be done. But I remember during the Vietnam War, there were protests in the US, right? We saw a lot of pictures of that. During Iraq invasion, there were also million marches, but they failed to stop the US from invading. Regardless, at this moment, we haven't been able to mobilize people even to that extent. What we need to do to mobilize people?
See, we have to accept one reality, fundamental reality, that during the era of the Vietnam War and all that, I mean, human rights was one of the things that took the center stage in the world's democratic and liberal democracies. But over the period of time, if we see post 9/11, things have literally changed. The narratives and the centrality of human rights, you know, is not at there that should have been. Even the states propagates, but if you see the human rights violation across, even in democratic states, that's a big question on that. So we need to accept that reality as well. But on Kashmir, I have slightly different point now when it comes to Kashmir, that the reliance on the Western democracies and Western liberal democracy, particularly vis-a-vis Kashmir. I mean, for their political and democratic, the support of the democratic and political rights of Kashmiri people is okay. See, we need to also understand that the fundamental movement in Kashmir that is sustaining is not because of the West. It's because of the local people's aspirations and the will. The very much example is, I mean, they have just booked students the day before, I guess, under UAPA, by just celebrating the win of Pakistan against India. And I mean, what is this reflects? This reflects that India, the state, has no answer, a political answer of a narrative, actually.
Right.
So they are meeting that narrative with a brutal force.
Right.
Now,
but sorry to cut you, but that illusion that India might have a political solution was lost, or it was dispelled 814 days ago, when they actually went with recolonization of Kashmir. But here's the problem. Is India's state power increasing or decreasing? Is it, while it is brutalizing Kashmiris, is it also not, before everybody's eye, not trying to demographically change the people?
Absolutely.
What happens then if it manages?
So I have another question, that is it helping them or not? The question is, it didn't. Because that we need to understand, because just 2-3 days ago, I mean, we have just, if you go the latest report of, I mean, one of the promises was to bring the economy to the top, I mean, the prosperous Kashmir and all that. But the question is,
Modi has been destroying India's economy, not
that's what I'm
Kashmir.
saying. So if you see the latest report, the unemployment rate in Kashmir is around 21.4% as of September 2021. The question is, it's not helping India. I mean, you just see the Home Minister visit.
Who's unemployed there?
The local Kashmiris particularly.
And now they're supplanting those Kashmiris by outside.
My fundamental,
and they will get jobs.
My fundamental assumption is it won't work. Actually, it's all about the people. It's not about the territory. India has been focusing a lot on territory. The fundamental question remained there. So what I want to say is that we actually, as a people, particularly living in AJK, Pakistan as a party to the conflict, need to stand with the people.
Absolutely.
That their political and their will should not be, you know,
and
that should be encouraged.
At some point, you'll have to talk about the modalities going forward. But before that, how many pundits and how many outsiders that are refugees being settled in Kashmir right now, as we speak? Can you give me any?
I agree that there has been a lot of number of people. Those
They're
have
changing
been,
the numbers,
and that's something which is very. I mean, we need to not only protest, but we need to work on that and tell the international community what he was saying also, that this is the something that we need to tell, that this is against the international law. You cannot deprive people of their land. And one more thing, I mean, world has agreed to counter colonialism. And this is the colonialism actually. This is the Indian colonialism in Kashmir. So I guess this is one point that world need to see that.
May I correct you? The world has decided to oppose colonialism that doesn't suit it. I'm talking about, if you are my enemy, I'm going to lash out. Otherwise, if I'm going to colonize, then I'm the hero, right? Allow me to go back to Chaudhry Sahab. Chaudhry Sahab, one aspect that we saw, especially when it was time of Donald Trump, he was ruling the US, and at that time India decided to do away with Article 370 and 35A. At that time, one felt that there are limits to liberal world order and also to these institutions, because when Donald Trump actually offers to mediate on Kashmir, he says that India will have to agree to it, and India doesn't. And amazingly, right now, Donald Trump is not in power and India continues the way they do. The question right now is, are we actually asking the wrong guys? Because perhaps of the international order, how it actually is built, you cannot ask a sovereign country to concede if it doesn't want to actually agree with you.
For example, if you see the history it will tell you the answer. When there was a League of Nations and the League of Nations failed to protect the basic right of the countries and the people, and what happened? The world has seen the worst world war. Is the same happening? The United Nations, whether they have they say it, but they cannot implement it. And that is the key reason I would say that the UN is failing to play its part. And basically, it's the powers. What suits them is what they do. As you mentioned, the colonialism is like, if it suits them, it is fine. If it doesn't suit them, then it is a problem. Same is with Donald Trump or everybody. So at this point, if we need to understand what the international establishment is looking Kashmir as. So at this point, we know they have been defeated in Afghanistan. They know there is a bloc coming up in this region with China, Russia, Pakistan, and some other. They know they need to have in that territory how they can stay. Obviously, Pakistan is not helping them. So I believe in coming days, what they will try to work for an independent Kashmir. They might try to convince India to have some sort of settlement. It would be an independent, it would theoretically be an independent. Effectively, it would be under India influence or whatever. So we need to understand these type of dynamics. Like when these leaders talk, they do not talk humanity. They do talk what they feel is good for them, is good to be powerful, and is good for their country to make it strong. So humanity is lot behind really. So so here's my answer. Means whatever they say, right. It always does not what they mean.
And it is an impressive answer, but when we are talking about these realities or perhaps these assumptions, I remember many premiers and presidents of Pakistan kept on talking about various options on Kashmir. But amazingly, while our side and the pundits on both sides actually kept on talking about various options, I haven't seen Indian government budge an inch from their stated position, and in fact they have been moving their goalpost in their direction. I mean, 1948 they committed something else at the UN. Then Shimla Agreement, they've changed their tone. And later on also they have been repeatedly changing their position. Now they claim it is their atut ang, their internal aspect, internal part. And that actually worries everybody, because the rulers at this moment in India would love to have a war, because they cannot handle economy. So how do you actually negotiate with someone who is not even rational actor?
If you see like the revocation of Article 370 and 35A, what is the purpose behind? The purpose behind is like they want to change the demographic. They want to have the settlement of Hindu extremists in that area. They want to have the powerful position be under Hindu extremist people, so that they can suppress Kashmiris. They want to change the demographic. Once they manage to change it, they can manipulate if it is a plebiscite, they can do whatever they can. They are following the way Israel is doing in Palestine. So considering that, yes, ultimately this particular government in India, they want the territory, and they really don't like any of the minorities. Doesn't matter whether it is Sikhs, doesn't matter whether it's Christian or Muslim. If you see, they have the RSS ideology, Hindutva ideology. So it means like India is for Hindus, is not a secular state anymore.
Yeah.
I believe like, the good come from bad sometime. Having the Prime Minister Modi, I think he done such a damage, and his government's done such a damage to the India. Nobody even dared to, even their enemies never even be able to do it, because they have destroyed the economy. The more important, they have destroyed the unity. Before that, everybody was saying, this is our India. Muslims were saying, this is our India. Hindus and Sikhs, everybody was saying it's our India. Now India is not, is Hindus' India. If you see like the latest example, when one of their players were Muslim, and they lost a cricket match, and how they acted. So you will see the good will come from the bad. But we need to play our part.
But that is true, and one doesn't doubt that Narendra Modi's government has damaged India's capacity to stay together or economics. But the problem is these giants, when they fall, sir, they take decades upon decades to actually that actually transpiring. And at that time, somebody from Congress or somewhere else will be there when India has to face the consequences. Meanwhile, Kashmiris are continuously suffering. Pakistani government came up with dossiers upon dossiers. Now they have released a great dossier on Kashmir, which documents war crimes, use of chemical weapons, the way children are being enforced, their disappearances also. And it has been sent to the UN's Secretary General and umpteen other places. It is an open document, can be accessed by anybody, but it doesn't change anything.
Sir, first of all, I think there are procedures everywhere, in every institution. So we have a very good dossier, but is it presented to the relevant people or the process we have taken? I don't know about that.
Our permanent representative to the UN actually took it to the Secretary General of the UN.
Okay, but
and he was briefed also.
Okay, but then it comes to the member of Security Council, and all these members should be given these dossiers, and we have to follow the procedure. We have to ask a meeting of the Security Council if it is possible.
We had two meetings, but nothing came out.
Nothing came out. But then there are other tools also. For example, the International Criminal Court in The Hague and the International Court of Justice.
They both say that you have to actually, the other party has to agree. And at Hague, they are not even signatory. Nor are we.
Okay, there are other cases also where both parties are not signatories in there, but the
lawfare can happen.
So why we are not searching some ways to go there? The Kashmiris can go there, but the problem is that International Court of Justice, there should be a state going there.
Right.
But in criminal court, the individual or organization can go as well.
Right.
But
Absolutely.
we have to follow the procedure.
Right, and procedure is important. It also adds to another question, and that is of lobbying. Lobbying is very important.
Very important.
And Pakistan has had this problem that while we might try to lobby, the other side has more money, more resources, more population to offer. How do you beat that?
But we have to have the long-term policy, long-term strategy. After 5th of August 2019, I talked to the different leadership in Azad Kashmir also, in diaspora we discussed also. In my opinion, it was the time when we have to bring millions of people out here in Azad Kashmir.
Right.
And give a call next year, for example, 27th of October 2022, that all the Kashmiris, wherever they are, or all the Pakistanis, they have to come out just for the picnic.
Okay.
But show to the world that these millions of people, they are against the brutality and the war crimes.
But
that will
pictures-
affect.
Pictures are again pictures, and this is the problem. You can amass perhaps million of people, right? Millions of people. The other side can bring billions, at least 1 billion, right? And that becomes a problem. But let me actually take it a little bit further. Dr. Kausa, while we are talking about all these matters, one thing actually came to my mind. All over the world, entertainment, messaging, while it is spreading too thin, and there is fake news as well, but there is also the element of aggregation. For example, one series, Korean series appears on Netflix. It is called Squid Game. All of a sudden it takes over the world, right? Is there a possibility that we can create enough software that, through entertainment at least, can educate people and motivate them about what is going on, or India will veto it already?
Well, I guess this is one of the areas which, when it comes to the long-term strategy, I guess there could be 2-3 areas simultaneously we need to work. One, of course, international lobbying and diplomacy. That is very much important, how to convince and how to build the narrative, and not just narrative that we have actually. On the other side, I guess we need to admit that we've been lacking on this area, that the soft power particularly. And see the art of telling story and the reality in a very objective way. I guess that is very much needed. Why I'm saying that, I mean, there has been, I mean, in past history, and if you read all these things, you come to know that there's also a huge constituency of people which is convinced and which believes in that. For us, I guess our effort has a lot been on diplomatic front, and actually that effort is very much dependent on local politics and international standing and economy, all that.
Even locally, if you're creating content, can you recall any drama, last time television series that you saw, which was made on Kashmir and which actually went well?
I guess
After Angar Wadi?
no.
When
see,
was it?
so-
Angar Wadi was, when exactly was it? In 90s?
in 90s, yes. So what I want to say
What
is
have
that,
we
see,
been doing
what is
for
the gap?
past 2 decades?
Yes, see, there is one more element to it. Until unless your civil society, particularly people who are aware, people who are associated with, those who are particularly from the cross section of civil society, they are not engaged in it, and they don't invest their energies. And investing their energies for the just cause, of course, of the people of Jammu and Kashmir, which is there. I mean, see, I have just one suggestion on that as well. When we talk about...
I just wanted to humbly point out that while we are talking about state power and the traditional use of power, which has been there for 70 plus years, now it is the age of disruption, right? In storytelling, you tried, perhaps not that convincingly, but you tried. There are other ways also, algorithms, right? Amazingly, North Korea, Iran, these countries are really isolated, but they have very effectively used internet algorithms in their advantage. If we cannot use the disruption that is traditional like India's, at least we could have gone there. We haven't.
See, that's what I want to say, that until unless you involve your society, a larger section of society in that, and they don't invest their energies, you cannot do that. As a state, as a party to this conflict, and particularly people of Jammu and Kashmir, and he named AJK government, that's very much there as well.
Right.
So, but one thing I just want to say, Once we believe that, and this is very true, that India is trying to convert Muslim majority into the other minority in Kashmir particularly. Now it's also the loss of their culture and identity and the language as well. Of course, the next assault would come from there, because the resistance actually in the Kashmir particularly is deeply rooted with the culture, identity and language as well. Now, there is also need to understand here that we need to preserve and protect that culture of language, identity and all those things.
In 70 years?
Not, we didn't do that.
Is
That's
there a
what I'm
language
saying.
institute? Kashmiri language
That's what
institute?
I'm saying, we need to do that.
Okay.
There is a need for that, one thing.
Yeah, but
and second, see, I just...
The problem, 8 years running, you and I have been discussing these things. And we keep on talking about these important things. For example, how many books are written on Kashmir from Indian side and our side. Every time we say we agree that it has to be done, why are we not doing it? 8 years, sir.
So this is very sad. This is very sad, because one thing I must say, the Pakistani, particularly the liberal people, which we call the sort of liberal intellectuals of Pakistan, I guess I must say that they need to also come and focus on this, where they stand for the other human rights values for the other people,
I'm sorry,
for the Kashmiris as well.
Liberals are as committed as anybody else. I'm not going to say that.
So no, I'm saying that they need to work more passionately on Kashmir for their just cause, one thing. And second, just I want to say one thing. As we've been talking in this show about that, how world is responding and world is not responding effectively the way we want and all that, but we also need to see it's not very easy for the Indian government. The panic particularly, of course they cannot come and publicly say that, but the pressure and the heat they are feeling, I mean, if you just see the Home Minister visit to Kashmir, the
Indian Home Minister's visit to occupied Kashmir.
Yes, to illegally occupied Kashmir, their own pro-Indian leadership like Farrukh Abdullah, what he said is that you need to talk to Pakistan on Kashmir, regarding Kashmir, one thing.
Sir,
He just...
do you honestly think that they are fighting for
I'm not saying
Kashmiri
that.
cause?
I'm saying something
or
different.
their own career?
I'm saying something different. I'm saying that it is not helping them.
Yeah,
The question is,
my problem is,
we need
whatever
not,
it is, if it doesn't bring about a change on ground,
I
and
personally
people
believe
keep on
it
suffering.
will bring change.
I
We
mean-
need to stand with the people of Jammu and Kashmir for the just right, and people are standing after the 5th of August, and the resolve and the resilience is more, I must say.
Right, but the cost in terms of human life is immense, and one cannot forget about that. I'm going to go to Councillor Chaudhary also, but I was told that we have a sound bite of Fawad Chaudhary Sahab, who is Federal Information Minister. Let us first listen in, and then we are going to go to UK again.
हमने अपनी मईशत, अपनी सियासत और अपनी खारजा पॉलिसी कश्मीरी अवाम की उमंगों के नज़र की है। हम इसी जज्बे से इमरान खान की हुकूमत आपके पीछे खड़ी है। आज वज़ीर-ए-आज़म इमरान खान कश्मीर का सफ़ीर है और पूरी दुनिया में कश्मीर के मसले के ऊपर सबसे भरपूर आवाज़ उठाई जा रही है। इंशाअल्लाह जबर का ये दौर ख़त्म होगा, इंशाअल्लाह आज़ादी का सूरज तलू होगा, और इंशाअल्लाह कश्मीर के लोग वो दिन भी देखेंगे जब उनकी अपनी हुकूमत होगी, इंशाअल्लाह। हमने अपनी मईशत, अपनी सियासत...
Right, so this was the message from the Federal Minister for Information and Broadcasting. I'm told that we are running out of time, but I will go one more time to Councillor Chaudhary. Sir, you must be listening to the discussion that is going on here. And the question at this moment is how to actually bring about as many disruptions as possible to ensure that there is some leeway for the Kashmiris on ground. I understand that I am talking to 3 Kashmiris. I'm not a Kashmiri, although my wife is, and we are as committed as anybody else. But the kind of sights and sounds that we have been seeing coming from Kashmir, Indian illegally occupied Kashmir and Jammu as well, are heart-rending. I cannot sleep at nights because of that. How to actually ensure that there is some kind of change, sir?
I think important is like we need to change something strategically. We need to have one think tank, and that think tank should have a different intellect from different sectors. That includes soft image, dramas, as you talked about, and obviously social media experts and all of that. And doesn't matter whichever government come or whatever, so we know actually what we want to achieve. and obviously that needs to be working. International lobbying plays such a big role. When you obviously do that, that makes big difference. I praise to our previous president, Sardar Masood Khan. He done a tremendous. I worked a little bit with him, and I've seen him speaking to our MPs and Lord Mayors and all of them. The way he delivered the message should be the way that message should have been delivered. I expect from our barrister Sultan as well, he would probably do the same. I think our representative can play a bigger role. Our overseas diaspora who is living in different parts of the world, they can play a bigger role. And more important, as you mentioned, we need to have through our dramas, through our different channels, we need to send this message in a soft way. Because important is this is not a territory war. This is a war on human rights. This is what we need to tell the world. And when we need to give the human right message, that always has to be in the soft language, and that always have to be impressive. And it's something like which could touch anyone who loves humanity. And we are living in this world. We know the people here, they love humanity. They even care about the animal rights. So human rights are much more important.
Absolutely, and Kashmiris have equal human rights as anybody else. I'm told that we have to conclude the program here, sir. Councillor Mubashir Chaudhary, I'm going to take this as the overall conclusion of the program. Maybe I won't have my own conclusion either, but thank you very much for your precious time. Thank you very much for joining in. Ali Raza says, thank you very much for your precious time. Dr. Waqas Ali Kausar, thank you very much. Always great having you in the show as well. You help me think as well, right? That is important. But viewers, while we were talking about various disruptions, it is plain that the old world order as it stood has failed for 70 years and more to actually provide the guaranteed human rights to the Kashmiri people, and also the promise of plebiscite and freedom. So perhaps at this time we have to work on disruptions, and it is going to be a collective effort. And I think at this moment it is important, whether your tone is harsh or soft, while your message is soft or hard, it is important to revitalize every person we have got, youth, Kashmiris, Pakistanis, the diaspora, and anybody who believes in human rights. If we don't do it right now, India is managing this trick before our eyes to disappear as many Kashmiris as possible and to replace them with somebody else and call them Kashmiris, which will be really a big tragedy, and it is called genocide. So this was today's program. Thank you very much for watching. Take care.